Humans are the best, and humans are the worst. When we finally revealed ourselves to the humans en masse, many of them were happy to see that we were actually real, as many of them didn't believe we were. Many were also very afraid of us, which is understandable of any first contact. Some of them brought gifts, so happy, so grateful to see us around, or sometimes they just wanted to be close, just enough to touch us. Others were so worried about what we would do that they actually attacked us. There were casualties on both sides, as many of them came at us with some sort of weapon, and humans would actually protect us. So we saw the worst and the best. Eventually, we got to know them very well. Both sides benefited quite well. You could say benefited greatly from mixing ourselves together. The human genome has so many possibilities that it is boggling of the mind, of all our minds, to know what could happen. They themselves can be experiments, even if all we do is check them for one thing or another. Something that could not damage them, just checking the body, so many different possibilities. Things that we can bring over to our own genome to help our own issues. The humans enjoy our tech and other tech as many other species began to join us, realizing that humans were not going to destroy them as they had done before. This raised the humans to a level never before seen or even understood by many of their own. And as they started to benefit, they began to reach out into the stars as well, not only using our own portals, our own space lanes, but creating their own. Somehow the humans were able to do so they could traverse the stars much, much faster than we could. As we began to settle in with humans, many of them actually settled with us on our own planets, working beside us and sometimes being so close that one could consider it intimate. But that, of course, depended on the species. One thing was clear, however, as much as we worked throughout the human area, and as much as they worked within ours, every time we brought up a single subject, it showed that both sides hated viruses so much. They hated it, the discomfort, the irritability. Sometimes viruses so dangerous they are deadly. Humans seem to hate this. They hate it even more than we do, as many of them would simply get angry, break something as they got angry, thinking of how these viruses could damage them. Our tech was used to destroy all but the most adaptive viruses that the human genome held. Those were known as the common cold, and one we call influenza. Both of these, to a human, are just simple inconveniences, even though it might make them not move for one of their solar rotations or two. In the case of either of these, they were potentially dangerous to us. So many times we had to quarantine the humans, making sure they would not bring these in, but the humans seemed to be very, very particular, and they wanted their bodies cleansed of these. It is understandable. Now that your species can reach a level of technology that the body can be constantly repaired, you would want it to be in the best health possible. Due to this, every single known species signed an agreement to never, ever develop viruses, ever. If they do have something that is dangerous, it is to be sealed and never, ever opened. Let it degrade over time, and let time do what it does best. Forget things. For many, many rotations around our star, the humans lived and worked with us. They laughed with us, they sang with us, they danced with us. Our technology had allowed them to be what they call immortal, the constant regeneration, the nanomachines that they had themselves just needed a little bit of what the humans say, tweaking. And once you used them on a human, of course, you had to wait till they were fully developed. This allowed them to spend centuries working on projects and perfecting things, bringing us to a level we didn't even think was possible. And this was a true golden age as we all shared time on each other's worlds, shared each other's culture, and shared each other's time. Then, human scientists that wanted wealth and the power, they released it. The plague, they called it. They were immediately quick to give it a name, and we didn't know why at first. A clearly engineered virus that spread through the air at first, and then turned to blood transmission. It directly attacked the central nervous system, though you wouldn't know if you were infected at first. Eventually you would begin to convulse, and the body would not function correctly. The nanomachines did what they were supposed to do, and they're the only thing holding the body together, as massive necrosis became constant throughout the body due to this virus, eating away at everything. The virus, as much as we would like it to simply fade off through time, ended up controlling any body that it got a hold of, taking control of the spinal column, whether internal or external, taking control of the mind, whether internal or external, it did not matter, and the body would be focused on one thing and one thing only: spreading this virus. Constant bleeding from the capillaries, especially around and inside the mouth, showed that the most effective way to transfer this virus was through biting into the next victim. We believed we had a solution, because this would mean that the insectoid species were immune, as their carapace was far too dense to bite through by anyone else. And for one shining moment throughout history, it worked. It seemed to work very well, as they were able to cleanse entire towns, cities, almost continents, and then something happened. It seems as though the virus had evolved. It had turned off the internal limiter to every single species it had, and to put it bluntly, if you look at a human who was infected, they originally bite with 1200 newtons of force, what they call 140 psi. Now, with the limiter turned off, they bite at 16,460 newtons, or 3700 psi. This may not be able to bite completely through the carapace, but it is enough to penetrate the carapace and infect everything inside. Once infected, the insectoids would start to convulse, flip around, and when they began to go after each other to spread said virus, they would attack each other, and they could, in fact, get through the carapace easily. Entire planets were infected by the initial aerial transmission, yet this only lasted for about 2.5 months human time. After that, people realized that there are no safe worlds, as every single world had been infected. Many around the entire cosmos had to deal, watching family change in front of them, having to put them down to make sure they were not infected as well, as the infected would rampage and destroy everything. If they ended up tearing apart a power conduit, it seemed to not even kill them, but seemed to just make them angrier. Those that could withdraw from the planet had to watch as their planets burned, completely overrun by the walking corpses of all the species that seemed to sprint extremely fast, jump towards one another, and seemed to have unlimited power and strength to break through anything to get at what they wanted. And what they wanted was anyone not infected. To our surprise, the humans already had a word for these. And we were even more surprised that they knew how to deal with the infected, though they would go out and grab a few of the infected of each species for study. The rest were either burned where they were, or the humans simply went up and destroyed their brains. Whether through direct fire or some sort of explosive, it didn't matter. Some of them simply took a vehicle and ran them down, crushing them under the tracks and the wheels. These heavy-laden armored vehicles were impossible for any species to simply fight their way through. On top was usually some sort of projectile launcher or some sort of plasma thrower. Everything was taken down, and the humans seemed to be very, very good at it. At first, it seemed as though the humans actually enjoyed what they were doing, laughing and joking as they did it. More and more, though, they began to despise what they were doing. They would have to go in and see entire families, children, destroyed by these viruses, as they simply had these massive welts over their bodies. Sometimes their faces would melt off. Sometimes even humans that seemed that they were in good health, yet were clearly infected, they had to destroy. They were too dangerous to leave. Beautiful worlds were completely destroyed in the fighting, as nuclear fire was used every so often. And even though that did not always work, one thing that did was setting the planet alight, using its own seismic activity against it, creating volcanic eruptions all over and absolutely burying the virus in molten slag that burned everything. From this, you would think the humans got away completely unscathed as they went and destroyed these things that everyone had turned into. No, they did not get away unscathed, as these things would come at you en masse, overtake you, and they would strip through even the armored exoframe that these humans wore. And sometimes it was even worse. Coming back up towards the human ship, they would seemingly stop, and they would send out one message: "We have been infected." After that, they would either cut the power and let the ship plummet back towards the planet, or if they were outside the gravity well, other ships would already begin to fire upon it, destroying it completely, sending the slag, the wreckage, back towards the planet to burn up and be destroyed. They did this without hesitation, seemingly no remorse. It seems as though they instinctively knew how dangerous this was, and they would deal with it permanently. Due to how effective the humans were, we began to rely on them. They would come in their very broad exosuits, completely covered in armor. They would lay waste to everything. Human aircraft would come in screeching as they dropped all sorts of plasma that seemed to stick to everything, as it burned everything to the ground. The infected would squeal and wail in the background. It seemed as though the humans would simply try to either put this out of their mind or make sure they couldn't hear it. The humans would also hear of an outbreak, and they would have a response extremely quickly, as though they were getting ready and they had to take this down. They also showed a willingness to risk everything to get those non-infected out. Many times, it cost the humans everything. There was more than 100 times the human shuttles would go down to rescue those that were being overrun. The humans would go in and put themselves directly into harm's way, using their automated weapons to tear apart everything else, burning everything with plasma, getting those inside that were the innocent caught behind, yet there was no room for the humans. And as the shuttle lifted off, they would fight with a fury that no one could ever understand, and they would destroy as many of the infected as possible. But as they fell, everyone knew what was coming. Everyone knew that there was the countdown. The moment the heart ceased and the brain ceased, there was a scant 5 human minutes. And then, as the humans would say, kablooey. Even through this, the humans didn't seem to stop. It seemed as though they wanted nothing more than to clear a planet, to cleanse these planets. If it had to be done one by one, that was what they would do. Yet over time, something changed. The humans used to joke with us. The humans used to laugh with us. The humans used to have that predatory smile, though creepy. We knew what it actually meant. In fact, the humans used to at least talk with us. Now, the humans look like their bodies are intact, yet their soul is gone, as many of them sit there after a mission, take off their helmets, their gear, and sit and look at nothing. Sometimes not blinking for almost hours at a time, simply existing in that moment, never smiling, never showing emotion. They were robots at that point. The humans continued this until 4 human years after the massive outbreak began. A human group was shown to have created this. It was an old bioweapon. When confronted, the scientist who was in charge simply laughed into the camera. The recording showed him jovial as he joked about how humanity is now the most populous in the galaxy, saying, "Humanity should thank us." Humanity did not thank them. After the interview, we looked for the human fleet as they seemed to simply disappear. They were nowhere to be found. We didn't know. We began to search more and more, and we only caught them just a little bit. They were all heading somewhere. Where? They were heading back to Earth. We looked on our media, and we saw as civilians, alongside military, demanded those connected with the virus be turned over to them. When the government denied this, the message the government received from the fleet coming out of FTL was simple. There's no world you can hide on. No hole deep enough. We are coming for you. Alive, if possible. Something may be lost in translation, but that is what it turns out to be. This was an odd message, as we knew that humanity held each other together. They would always lift each other up. But now, humanity tore into Earth itself, almost ripping into the mantle. A rage we didn't know, didn't understand. A rage that should be ours, yet it seemed like the humans were more and more angry. The longer it went on, the more dangerous it became. Even the ships in space began to fire down, constantly demanding that those that created the virus, all those connected, must be given over to the fleet. After 16 days, the researchers were given over to the fleet. Yet, the Earth fleet demanded something else. The rest. We didn't know why they needed to sleep, but apparently there was something lost in translation, as they wanted all those connected. All of them. Every single one. When they refused again, they fought once more until they had all the humans involved, at least those still alive. They left with a warning that said if they find even one of these had been kept alive, they're coming back, and they're not going to be happy. The fleet was monitored as it went all the way to Pretension 2. A world still completely overrun by the infected, as it was going to be the next one to be cleared. With this, we found out that the shuttle was loaded with those that were involved. A standard shuttle with all its standard equipment, weapons, food, water, it doesn't matter. And it was remotely piloted down to the surface. It landed comfortably, oddly enough. We watched from our own ships. We waited for something to happen, and then we saw aerospace fighters being sent down towards this shuttle. It seemed as though the shuttle was being turned on and turned off and turned on and turned off. We didn't understand what was going on, but the aerospace fighters came in very close and began to strafe down onto the shuttle, destroying the engines and, if need be, blowing the engines off the main body. Then they simply turned around and left those that created this outbreak, this disease, this virus, to enjoy the fruits of their work. The humans have a phrase for this too. They call it poetic justice. I don't understand. Personally, I would have simply launched them out of an airlock, but as long as they're gone, I will be content. Yet the humans were not content with just this, as they apologized profusely for this, claiming they should have known, they should have realized, as some of the humans are the absolute worst. They have no direction, morality, something like that. They don't understand, they don't realize until the consequences are right there in their face, sometimes biting through their skin. Yet the majority of humanity was not like this, and they continued to apologize. And they said to everyone, all you have to do is call us. We didn't understand, but they will still arrive to handle any infection we tell them about. They will arrive so fast, it is almost frightening. And they are so efficient at clearing entire planets that you only have to wait, depending on the planet, between 2 and 12 planetary rotations for it to be completely cleared, and the humans to say, here you go, your fresh planet, it's all yours. That is all we hear from them. The humans don't talk anymore. They don't laugh anymore. They don't play anymore. They don't even try intercourse with us anymore, and that was a common human trait, one that we very much enjoyed. But it seems as though the humans were broken by the plague. One day, perhaps, they will reach out to us. One day, the other species might forgive. But the humans, they have sent messages to let us know that they understand that they may be forgiven, but they know that the other species will never, ever forget this. This is why we are wary of the humans. We worry about telling them that we forgive them. Because if we were to say that, and they want to know why we were willing to forgive them, we would have to admit that we almost did the exact same thing to their species in the Earth year 1494. The interstellar wars that the humans call the Interstellar Wars Z is a fairy tale ending compared to what the humans could do to us if they only know what we almost did to them, almost wiping out their entire species and never coming back to fix it. But it seems as though the humans have ways of fixing things, ways that frighten us all. This is why we worry for when that day will come. On the human homeworld of Earth. Man, I hate these infected assholes, man. I just got back. I still smell like these. Ugh, they're disgusting. It was just on the outside of my armor. Ugh. I mean, it was fun at first, but now... True. But it could be worse if we didn't have that dry run back in 1494. I mean, if it wasn't for that, they wouldn't have the idea for the movies and the books and everything else. Yeah, it did kind of save our bacon. Perhaps we should actually thank him for all that. I mean, if it wasn't for that outbreak, how the hell would we have known to deal with zombies, of all things? Hello, everybody. This is Syntax. Thank you so much for joining me on today's story. Before I go, I gotta send out some special thanks to a few of my supporters, and these will be Erica Gem, The Black Trapper, MTF Guard, SS Demon, Guardian Sage, Cause Lynn, Sir, and Chris Dixon. Thank you all so much for supporting the channel. Everybody else, I will see you on the next one. This is Syntax, punching out.